Heidi ho there, my lovelies. Welcome back to Crazy But Not Dangerous. I'm Shorty Vaughn, and I just want to come on here and say thank you so much for your patience. And I know that my videos have been far and few between. I have never been so tired in my whole life. I thought I had been tired before. I have never been tired in my life until now. It's taking everything that I have just to prepare very simple meals. And then I am just, down for the count. It has whooped my butt. Anyhow, but I love y'all. Big squeezy hugs, babies. Big smoocher-roonies. Absolutely. Thank you for your love and your support. Thanks for watching my videos. I'm behind on my comments, but I'm going to get back on track. If you have sent me an email or a card, I have received it. I feel terrible, but my morale it couldn't be better. Thank you so much for every wonderful thing, all your love and your support, and your likes and subscribes. Hello to all my new subscribers. I'm getting back to it, I promise. I have missed you all like nobody's business. But I wanted to make sure that I told the story of my Great Grandma Lilly and Death Knocks 3 times. I am in collaboration with my great friend Jerri-ellen over at Cooking with Neighbors. Hi Jerri-ellen and her cousin Mel from Cooking with Mel. Hello Mel. And Linda over at Create with Linda. Hello my lovies. I just adore you. Anyhow, they've all done something special for Halloween, and this is my little contribution. Go over and take a look at my co-collaborators. Yay, hooray. I just adore these ladies, and they are so kind to let me join in. So no more chit-chat. Let's get down to it. I'm going to tell you the story of my Great Grandma Lilly. Here we go. So I'm going to take you back now, all the way to the very early 20th century. My Great Grandma Lilly lived in Southeast Virginia. She lived very remotely in the hills, on a hill, and on a dirt road. There wasn't a neighbor for miles around, and it was dark and wooded and very, very remote. My great grandpa, was a coal miner. Back then, you were either a coal miner or a logger or a trapper. Maybe you had a job in town, or maybe you were a moonshiner. And we had plenty of those in my family too, no doubt about it. Anyhow, my Grandma Lilly was a very beautiful woman. She was an exquisite, delicate beauty. She was not a new bride. She had 9 kids, and my great-grandpa worked swing shift. So she was very accustomed to being home alone at night, and she wasn't afraid, and she wasn't a jumpy person. She was superstitious, and that also runs in my family. I myself, a little bit superstitious. But Grandma Lilly, she was all right. She was self-sufficient, and she had all these youngins, all these kids. Anyhow, my great-grandpa was on swing shift, so he was gone that night that this incident started. And my great-grandma was home alone with the kids. And I would like to tell you that it was a dark and stormy night, but it wasn't. Yeah, it was a nice autumn night and not a breeze. Crisp, cool, clean air. Not a storm cloud in sight. Yeah, couldn't ask for better weather. Kind of like tonight. Not even a little bit of a breeze. Anyhow, it was time to feed the kids, and my grandma was getting ready to make dinner, and she went to her stove. She cooked on a kerosene stove, and she went over to the kerosene stove and, started to get things ready, and she was pouring her kerosene in, and all of a sudden there was a 3 knocks at the front door. And this is really uncommon because it's dark, and you don't get a lot of callers after dark. And if you do, it's probably nothing good. And so she was a little taken aback. But, she goes over, And she opens the door, getting ready to greet somebody, and there's nobody. There's nobody there at the door. And she looked outside and looked around and counted up the kids, and everybody's accounted for, and she just doesn't even know what to make of it. And, I'm not even sure Ding Dong Ditch was a thing back then, but yeah, she didn't quite know what to think about it, but kind of shrugged it off and went back to the stove and filled it with kerosene and got her, victuals cooking for the night to feed all of these 9 kids of hers, and didn't think anything about it and went on about the rest of her night. Woke up the next morning and worked in the garden. And my great grandma Lily was an exquisite, delicate beauty, and she had a singing voice like a songbird. People would come from miles around to hear her sing. Anyhow, she gardened, and she gardened hard Scrabble Hill. Yeah, made lots of great gardening to feed up all of those kids. Good canner, good singer, good church-going lady, little superstitious. Yeah. So she went about her day doing all the things and taking care of her family and her kids and what have you. And anyhow, the next afternoon, my great grandpa, he's still on swing shift. He goes back to the mine. Anyhow, it's getting dark, and my great grandma, she's got to get the food on for the kids. She's got to make supper for all the youngins, and she goes over to the stove and she's fixing and preparing everything, and she goes to fill her kerosene, and 3 raps at the door. And now she's startled. She just looks at the door. She doesn't even know what to do with herself. She's so upset. She just looks at the door. No, you never get callers after dark. This isn't 2020 when people show up at your door at any given hour. This was the early 20th century, and people didn't just show up after dark. And she's just standing there, and she's looking at the door, and the kids are all looking at her, and, well, she walks over to the door and reaches out and turns the knob and opens it up, and there's not a soul there. And now she's really just beside herself, and she's a little teary-eyed, and she's breathing real hard, and she's looking around. She goes outside and looks around, and there's a big moon, and she can't see anybody. Nothing. All the kids inside the house, everybody is accounted for. She is just beside herself. And she gets it together, and she goes back and she finishes making dinner. And the kids all eat, and then they read from the Bible, and everybody gets ready for bed, and she tucks everybody in. And my grandma, Louise, was sitting there, keeping her company. She was one of the older children, so she was allowed to stay up a little bit longer. And my grandma, Lily, my great grandma Lily, sat in her rocking chair and crossed her arms over her chest like this and looked at Louise and said, "Louise, dear, do you think I'll look pretty in my coffin?" And my grandma, Louise, at the time she was a young woman, "Mama, don't talk like that. Don't talk like that. You're beautiful. Everyone knows you're an exquisite beauty, a delicate beauty, and you're going to live a long time, and we need you. Don't talk like that." She just shook her head and said, "I don't know. I don't know. All you can do is pray about it, I guess." Anyhow, my grandma went to bed. My great grandma went to bed. Tomorrow is another day. My great grandma Lily, she woke up and she went about her business, her gardening, her canning, feeding the kids, taking care of her husband, when he came home from work, getting him all ready to go to work the next night. But she's not right all day. She is just beside herself all day. She's got all this nervous energy, and she's looking around the yard, and, when she has a minute, she's praying. She's praying, and she's worried. She's all nervous. Anyhow, they can't afford for my great-grandfather to miss a day at the mine. They're just barely making it. There's no asking him to stay home. You know, they can't afford to fall behind. And she gives him a hug and gives him a kiss, and he tells her it'll be all right. Don't worry so much. It'll be fine. And she gives him a hug, and you know, it's starting to get dark, and she's getting more and more antsy and more nervous, and she's just worried. She's just worried, and she's fretting up a storm. Yeah. But she's got to feed these kids. So she puts it off as long as she can, and the little ones are all getting hungry, and she's got no choice. Anyhow, she goes over to the stove, and she's standing there for a while and mustering up all of her courage and what have you, and she gets her kerosene out and sets it on the stove, and she's looking at it, and she's looking at the door, and she's looking at the kids, and you know, she's got to do what she's got to do. Anyhow, she goes over to pour the kerosene in the stove to get it started. And as she's pouring, the 3 knocks at the door. Anyhow, she spilled the kerosene all over her apron, and the flame licked up and caught her apron on fire and caught my poor great-grandmother on fire. And it was horrible, just horrible. And the kids put the fire out, and the older kids ran down the hill and ran towards town to go get help. And they came back with some men, and the men put her on a chair and carried her down the hill because you couldn't really get a car up it. And yeah, it was very rutted and very rural and very rugged. And they carried her down the hill on the chair. And as she was being carried down, her fingernails were falling off because of the burning. And my Uncle Otis was 2 years old, and he was collecting her fingernails for her as they walked down the hill. Anyhow, she did not make it. She did die a few days later. She succumbed to her burns. And that is the story of how my great-grandmother Lily died. A little bit gruesome, I know. But we tell that story every Halloween. And there was never anyone at the door. Now, some of my relations, when they've had a little bit of the moonshine, will tell you the ending is that when the kids came back from carrying her down the hill so that she could go get medical treatment at the nearest hospital, when they came back, that there was a big claw mark on the door. That's not true. But, you know, that really adds to the story and freaked you out bad when I was a kid. Yeah. Scared the living daylights out of me. But, you know, you gotta have a little moonshine in you to get that part of the story. I don't tell that part of the story usually unless I'm really trying to freak the kids out. But yeah. So nobody knows who was at the door. People sometimes say it was death at the door. Knocked 3 times. I don't know. But it is a true story. In fact, that, you know, the kids will attest to the 3 knocks on the door 3 nights in a row, and that she was nervous and scared, spilled kerosene all over herself, and succumbed to fire and flame. So that is my extra spooky holiday story. I never knew my great-grandparents. My Grandma Louise was a wonderful woman, and I loved her very much. And she would tell the story too. She would tell it exactly the way that I told it. That's the way my mother told it. That's the way I tell it. And hopefully one of these days, that's the way Julian and Julian's babies and grandbabies will tell it. And I love family stories. You know, we're far enough removed from Lily that it doesn't hurt. And even my grandma liked to tell the story. Yeah, absolutely. She liked to tell the story, and she liked to scare all the kids with it. You know, you better be good. You don't want death to come knocking on your door, do you? Anyhow, happy Halloween. Yay, hooray. That's the story of my great grandma Lily. I'm hoping that I did not scare you too awfully bad. And yeah, I hope that it's a story that keeps getting told generation after generation. And we just keep that going because, you know, that's a little bit of Appalachia history. Absolutely. You don't want to lose that. Anyhow, I've got to go lay down and rest for a while. Be good, be careful, look both ways. Happy Halloween. If you're going out tonight, be good, be careful, and if death knocks 3 times on your door, don't answer it. And call out for pizza. And don't mess around with kerosene. See you next time. Happy Halloween.